The moment Clara Jeck spoke Arabic, the entire ballroom went silent. 400 of London's richest people stopped talking. Glasses stopped making sounds. Even the music stopped. Everyone looked at the young woman in the simple cleaning clothes who had just shocked billionaire Abel Wilson by understanding his darkest secret. "Impossible," Abel whispered, his face turning white as snow. Clara looked him straight in the eyes and said in perfect Arabic, "Nothing is impossible when you think the person in front of you is stupid." The room filled with gasps and whispers. Abel's business partner stepped back in fear. Security guards rushed over. Nobody could believe what they had just seen. The invisible maid had been listening and understanding everything all along. This is the amazing, true story of how Clara Jeck, a cleaning lady from Manchester, brought down one of the world's most dangerous men using only her brain and courage. Hello friends, thank you so much for stopping by. Please support me by subscribing to my channel, like and share this video to your family and friends. I truly appreciate your kind heart. So, let's begin. Clara had been invisible for 3 long years. Every morning she put on her gray uniform and walked into the tall glass buildings of London's business district. She cleaned floors, wiped windows, and emptied trash while millionaires made deals around her. To them, she was like a piece of furniture that moved. But Clara Jeck was hiding a secret that would change everything. Born in Manchester to a Chinese father and Lebanese mother, Clara grew up speaking 3 languages at home. Her mother taught her Arabic through beautiful stories and songs. Her father shared Chinese wisdom and stories. At school, she learned French and Spanish because she loved the sound of different languages. Clara was very smart in school. Her teachers said she could become anything: someone who helps countries talk to each other, a translator, maybe work for the government. Clara dreamed of traveling the world, helping different cultures understand each other, bringing peace to places hurt by war. Those dreams broke when Clara was 19. Her father had a stroke that made him unable to work. Her mother needed surgery they could not pay for. The family's small restaurant failed when the economy got bad. Clara had to leave university 3 months before finishing to work and help her family. "I'm sorry, my dear," her mother said with tears in her eyes. "Your dreams will have to wait." "Dreams don't go away," Clara replied, trying to sound strong. "They just take different paths." Clara found work with Elite Property Services, a company that cleaned London's fanciest buildings. She scrubbed floors in banks, wiped tables in private clubs, and cleaned offices where powerful people made decisions that affected millions of lives. The work was hard and the pay was terrible, but Clara discovered something valuable. Rich people talked freely around cleaning staff like they were invisible. They discussed private business deals, political plans, and personal secrets while Clara quietly worked nearby. Clara learned to listen while looking like she didn't understand. Over 3 years, she heard conversations that would have shocked the public. She learned about tax tricks, corrupt politicians, and business practices that hurt ordinary families. But who would believe a Chinese cleaning girl from Manchester? That changed on a cold December evening that would make history. Clara was working at the Savoy Hotel, getting the ballroom ready for the annual party of the Global Peace Foundation. The foundation was run by Abel Wilson, one of Britain's richest men, who said he helped refugees from war-torn countries. Abel Wilson was worth over £8 billion. He owned shipping companies, construction companies, and technology businesses around the world. But he was most famous for his charity work. His foundation built refugee camps, medical clinics, and food centers across the Middle East and Africa. The newspapers called him a saint. Politicians praised his work helping people. The United Nations had given him awards for helping desperate families escape violence and poverty. Clara had always respected his work from far away. Finally, she thought, someone was using their money to help people who really needed it. The ballroom looked beautiful that evening. Crystal lights cast golden light over tables decorated with white flowers. The finest food and wine were served on expensive plates. Everyone wore costly clothes and jewelry worth more than Clara earned in 5 years. Clara worked quietly in the background, cleaning glasses and arranging flowers while staying completely invisible. The wealthy guests talked and laughed around her like she didn't exist. Abel gave a moving speech about helping refugee families. He showed pictures of children who had run away from their homes because of war. He talked about the camps his foundation had built and the hope they brought to desperate people. "These families have lost everything," he said, his voice full of emotion. "Their homes are destroyed. They have no food, no clean water, no safe place to sleep. But together we can give them hope. We can show them that people still care." The crowd wiped away tears and clapped for nearly 5 minutes. Clara felt proud to be working at such an important event, even in a small way. After his speech, Abel walked to the corner of the ballroom where Clara was arranging fresh flowers. He was talking with a man she knew from news reports, Dr. Hassan al-Mahmoud, supposedly a Syrian doctor who helped run refugee camps. They spoke in English at first, talking about the success of the evening and how much money they had raised for refugee families. Then Abel switched to Arabic. Clara's world stopped as she understood his words. "The European governments have no idea what we're really doing in those camps." Dr. al-Mahmoud replied in Arabic, "Perfect. The camps make excellent training places for our operations." Clara kept arranging flowers, but her hands began to shake. These men weren't helping refugees. They were using refugee camps for something terrible. Abel continued in Arabic. "Every camp we build has secret areas underground. We train fighters there and store weapons. The police never check because we're a charity organization. The Syrian operation makes us a lot of money," Dr. al-Mahmoud said. "We charge the government millions for information about rebel locations. Then we charge the rebels millions for government troop movements. Both sides pay us while they fight each other." Clara felt sick. These monsters were making money from both sides of a civil war while pretending to help the victims. But the conversation became even more horrible. "What about the refugee families who ask too many questions?" Dr. al-Mahmoud asked nervously. Abel's voice turned ice cold. "Families who discover our secret operations have accidents. Very sad, but necessary for business. And the aid workers who become suspicious? They disappear in the desert. Happens all the time. Very dangerous area." Clara's flower vase slipped from her hands and broke on the marble floor. The sound echoed through the ballroom like thunder, and suddenly everyone was looking at her. Abel turned slowly, his cold blue eyes looking at Clara for the first time all evening. Something in her face must have given her away because his expression darkened with suspicion. "Clumsy girl," said Lady Morrison, one of the wealthy guests, shaking her head. "Really, the help these days has no training." But Abel didn't look away. He studied Clara's face like a scientist looking at a dangerous bug. "Clean that up," he said quietly in English, but his eyes never left her face. Clara knelt to pick up the broken glass, her mind racing. She had stumbled onto something huge, a fake charity that was actually making money from war while using refugee families as human shields. These people were making money from human suffering on an unimaginable scale. As she worked, Clara noticed that Abel was whispering to his security chief, a tall man with cold eyes who looked more like a criminal than a bodyguard. Clara's blood went cold. Did he suspect that she understood Arabic? How could he possibly know? She finished cleaning up the glass and tried to walk away naturally, but her heart was beating so fast she could barely breathe. "Excuse me, miss," Abel called out, just as she reached the door. Clara turned around, forcing herself to look confused and innocent. "You seem shaken," Abel said, speaking English but watching her face very carefully. "Are you feeling well?" "Yes, sir," Clara replied quietly. "Sorry about the vase. It was an accident." Abel smiled, but his eyes remained cold and calculating. "These things happen. Tell me, what do you think of our charity work here tonight?" "It seems very important, sir. Helping people is good." "Indeed it is." Abel paused, then added something in Arabic. "Wouldn't you agree that helping people is the most important work?" It was a trap. Clara understood every word, but she forced herself to look blank and confused. "I'm sorry, sir. I don't understand," she said in English, hoping her voice sounded steady. Abel switched back to English. Nothing important. I was just wondering if you spoke any other languages. Many young people are quite educated these days. Just English, sir. I left school early. Abel nodded slowly, but Clara could see he wasn't convinced. I see. Well, thank you for your hard work tonight. The flowers looked beautiful. Clara hurried toward the kitchen, her legs shaking. She needed to get out of there immediately and figure out what to do with the terrible knowledge she now carried. But as she collected her cleaning supplies, she heard two of Abel's security men talking near the elevator. "Boss wants us to follow the Chinese girl home," one said quietly. "Find out everything about her, where she lives, who she talks to, what she knows." Think she understood something she shouldn't have? Boss doesn't take risks. If she's a threat, we handle it permanently. Clara's blood turned to ice water. Abel suspected her, and his men were planning to follow her home. If they discovered where she lived, they would hurt her family too. Clara slipped out through the hotel's back door and into the foggy London night. She could see two men in dark coats following her from a distance, trying to stay hidden in the shadows. But Clara had grown up in Manchester's toughest neighborhoods. She knew every trick for disappearing when dangerous people were hunting you. She jumped into the underground station and waited until the very last second before jumping onto a leaving train, leaving her followers stuck on the platform. She changed trains 4 times, took 2 different buses, then walked through a maze of narrow streets until she was absolutely certain no one was behind her. Finally, she made it to the small flat she shared with her parents and younger brother in East London. But she couldn't stay there. If Abel's men found her address, they would threaten her family to keep her quiet. Clara packed a tiny bag with just the basics and left a note for her parents saying she had to go away for emergency work training. Then she took her life savings, £400 she had been keeping for her father's medical treatment, and checked into a cheap hotel under a false name. She spent the long night thinking about her impossible situation. She had no proof except her own word. Abel was too powerful and too clever to leave evidence where anyone could find it. The training camps were probably hidden too well to discover. The aid workers who might have helped were already dead. Clara felt completely hopeless until she remembered something her Chinese grandmother used to say: "When you cannot defeat the dragon with strength, you must defeat it with cleverness." Abel thought he was safe because he assumed Clara was just an uneducated cleaning girl. But Clara had something he didn't expect. 3 years of listening to powerful people's secrets and learning exactly how their world really worked. The next morning, Clara made a decision that would change her life forever. Instead of running away and hiding, she would fight back. But she needed help from someone who could make the world listen. Clara remembered a conversation she had heard 6 months earlier between 2 newspaper bosses. They had been talking about stories about corruption in high places. One name kept coming up: Rebecca Walsh, a journalist known for exposing powerful criminals that everyone else was afraid to touch. Clara found Rebecca's contact information through the newspaper's website and sent a simple email. "I have information about Abel Wilson that will shock the world. Meet me at Cafe Luna on Baker Street at 2 p.m. if you want the story of your career." Rebecca arrived exactly on time, a sharp-eyed woman in her 40s who looked like she could see through lies with a single glance. "You're just a kid," Rebecca said, sitting down across from Clara. "What could you possibly know about Abel Wilson that I don't already know?" "I know he's not the saint everyone thinks he is," Clara replied calmly. "I know his refugee camps are actually training places. I know he's making millions by selling information to both sides of wars, and I know he's responsible for the disappearance of aid workers who discovered his secrets." Rebecca leaned forward, suddenly very interested. "How could you possibly know any of this?" "Because I speak Arabic, and he doesn't think cleaning ladies are smart enough to understand what powerful men say when they think no one is listening." For the next 2 hours, Clara told Rebecca everything she had heard at the party. Rebecca took careful notes and asked detailed questions. By the end of their meeting, Rebecca's face was pale with shock. "If this is true," Rebecca said quietly, "it's the biggest scandal in British history. But we need proof. Words from one person isn't enough to bring down someone like Abel Wilson. Then let's get proof, Clara said with determination she didn't know she had. Rebecca stared at her for a long moment. You know how dangerous this is, don't you? Abel has unlimited money and connections everywhere. People who cross him have a tendency to disappear. People are already disappearing because of him, Clara replied. Refugee families, aid workers, anyone who gets in his way. I can't stay quiet and let more innocent people suffer. Over the next week, Rebecca used her newspaper connections to research Abel's business empire, while Clara provided insider knowledge about how his operations really worked. They discovered a pattern of suspicious activities around every refugee camp his foundation had built. But they needed more than suspicious patterns. They needed direct evidence of criminal activity. There's another charity party next week, Clara told Rebecca during one of their secret meetings. Abel will be there with his business partners. If I can get close enough to record their conversations. Absolutely not, Rebecca said firmly. It's too dangerous. He already suspects you. He suspects, but he's not certain. And his pride is our advantage. He can't imagine that a cleaning girl could be smart enough to beat him. The second party was held at the Natural History Museum, with tables set up between the dinosaur displays. Clara wore her usual cleaning uniform and carried a small recording device hidden in her apron pocket. Her chance came when Abel stepped outside onto the museum's terrace with Dr. Al-Mahmoud and two other men Clara didn't recognize. They thought they were alone in the cool night air, but Clara was cleaning windows nearby. The conversation she recorded that night would bring down an empire built on lies and human suffering. Speaking in Arabic, Abel discussed specific details about his illegal operations. He named corrupt government officials who helped him avoid inspections. He described exactly how refugee camps were used to hide training places and weapons storage. Most importantly, he gave exact locations and dates for upcoming operations. But Clara also recorded something that made her heart race with terror. The journalist Rebecca Walsh is asking too many questions, one of the men reported. Our sources say she's investigating our Syrian operations. Then she needs to have an accident, Abel replied coldly. These things must be handled quickly before they become problems. And what about the cleaning girl? Our people lost her last week, but she's somewhere in London. Abel's voice became deadly quiet. Find her. When you do, make sure she never speaks to anyone again. Clara's hands shook as she realized they were planning to eliminate both her and Rebecca. She had to get this recording to the police immediately. She slipped away from the terrace and hurried toward the museum exit, her heart pounding with fear and determination. But as she reached the main entrance, two large men in dark suits stepped out of the shadows to block her path. Going somewhere, Miss Jex? One of them asked with a cruel smile. Clara's blood went cold. They knew her real name. They had found her. I think Mr. Wilson would like to have a word with you, the second man said, reaching for her arm. Clara did the only thing she could think of. She screamed as loudly as possible. Help! These men are trying to kidnap me! Her voice echoed through the museum's grand entrance hall. Security guards came running. Other guests turned to see what was happening. In the confusion, Clara broke free and ran back into the crowded party. She pushed through the crowd, desperately looking for a way out while Abel's men chased her. She could see Abel himself pushing through the guests, his face twisted with rage. Clara reached the museum's back exit and burst out into the London streets. Behind her, she could hear shouting and running footsteps. She ran through the dark streets like her life depended on it, because it did. She had the evidence that would expose Abel's crimes, but she had to stay alive long enough to deliver it. Clara made it to Rebecca's apartment building and pounded on the door until the journalist answered. They know everything, Clara gasped, still breathing hard from running. They're planning to eliminate both of us, but I got it all on tape. Rebecca listened to the recording with growing amazement and horror. When it finished, she looked at Clara with new respect. This is incredible. We can destroy his entire operation with this evidence. But first, we need to get you somewhere safe. What about the story? The story goes live tonight. Every major newspaper in Britain will have copies by morning. Abel Wilson's days of hiding behind charity work are over. The story broke at midnight, appearing online and in newspapers across the world. The headline was simple, but devastating. The charity fraud: how Britain's most beloved billionaire built an empire on human suffering. By dawn, Abel's offices were surrounded by police. His bank accounts were frozen. Arrest warrants were issued in 12 countries. Most importantly, real aid workers were finally able to reach the refugee camps and provide genuine help to the families Abel had been using. But Clara insisted on telling her own story on television. Against Rebecca's advice about her safety, she appeared on the morning news to explain how she had exposed the fraud. "Miss Jex," the news anchor began, "you've been working as a cleaning lady despite your education and language skills. How did you end up in this position?" Clara looked directly into the camera, thinking of all the other educated immigrants and working-class people who had been underestimated and ignored. "I ended up cleaning floors because life doesn't always go according to plan," she said calmly. "But what I learned is that being invisible can be a superpower. When people think you don't matter, they say things around you that they would never say to their equals. What do you want people to understand about what you discovered?" Clara's voice grew stronger and more passionate. "I want them to understand that the refugee crisis isn't just a tragedy. It's often a crime. Abel Wilson and people like him deliberately create and make human suffering worse because it makes them money. Every family forced to leave their home, every child separated from their parents, every person who dies trying to cross dangerous borders. Some of them could be alive today if not for people who make money from misery." She leaned forward, speaking directly to millions of viewers around the world. "But I also want people to understand that we all have power, even when we feel powerless. I was just a cleaning lady from Manchester, but I spoke 4 languages and I paid attention. When the moment came to choose between safety and justice, I chose justice." "What's next for you, Miss Jex?" Clara smiled for the first time in weeks. "I'm going back to university to finish my degree in international law, because if this experience taught me anything, it's that the world needs more people willing to stand up to those who make money from human suffering." The interview was watched by over 30 million people worldwide. Within days, Clara received scholarship offers from universities across Britain. More importantly, she received thousands of letters from other immigrants, workers, and ordinary people who had been inspired by her courage. Abel Wilson was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of getting out. His network of corrupt officials and criminal partners was exposed and destroyed. The fake refugee camps were shut down and replaced with real humanitarian facilities run by honest organizations. Most importantly, thousands of refugee families received real help for the first time in years. Children were brought back together with their parents. Medical care reached people who desperately needed it. Hope returned to communities that had almost given up. 6 months later, Clara was back at university, but she also continued working with Rebecca to investigate other cases of corruption hiding behind charity work. They received tips from janitors, security guards, waiters, and other invisible workers who had overheard powerful people's secrets. Clara learned that her story had inspired a movement. Around the world, people in seemingly powerless positions were finding the courage to speak up when they saw injustice. The phrase, "invisible but listening," became a symbol of hope for those fighting against corruption and abuse of power. On quiet evenings, Clara would receive emails from refugee families whose lives had been saved by her courage. They wrote to thank her, to tell her about children who were finally safe, about families who had been brought back together, about communities that were rebuilding with real help instead of fake charity. Those messages reminded Clara why she had risked everything. In a world full of Abel Wilsons, people who saw human suffering as a business opportunity, there had to be people willing to say no. Clara Jex had started as an invisible cleaning lady, dismissed and ignored by the very people she served. But when the moment came to choose between silence and truth, between safety and justice, she had found her voice. And when she spoke in that ballroom, using the language that Abel thought was his secret weapon, she changed everything. The crystal light still cast golden light in London's grand ballrooms. The wealthy still gathered to congratulate themselves on their generosity and humanitarian work. But now they knew that someone might be watching, someone who understood their languages and their secrets, someone who would not stay quiet when faced with evil. Clara Jex had taught them that the most dangerous person in any room might be the one they never notice, the one they assume is powerless, uneducated, unimportant. She had taught them that everyone has a voice. Sometimes it just takes courage to use it. The maid who replied in Arabic had changed the world, one overheard conversation at a time. And in doing so, she had proved that no one, no matter how poor, how invisible, how underestimated, is truly powerless when they choose to stand up for what's right. Abel Wilson's greatest mistake wasn't underestimating Clara Jex's intelligence. It was forgetting that invisible doesn't mean voiceless. And Clara had shown him, and the world, just how powerful a voice can be when it speaks the truth. Dear friends, thank you so much for watching. Please support me by subscribing to my channel. And don't forget to like and share this video. It means the world to me. Take care of yourself and never forget how much you're loved. I can't wait to see you in the next video. Sending you all my love.